Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. Today I thought I would do a video about one of my favorite tools that I've learned about in the past few years, and I don't know how I missed learning about this for so many years. I think they've been around for a long time, but someone told me about this tool a couple of years ago, and it's called a Miter Vise Jig. And if you've never seen one of these, they're super handy, and they would have been super handy for me, especially when I was a beginner, because I wasn't very good at filing. So it's an interesting tool. It has a lot of different uses, and I thought we could talk about it today. Before we do that, though, I'd like to thank some groups of people. My patrons over on Patreon are my core group of supporters, and I want them to know just how much I appreciate their support, not only the financial part of it, but also what a great community they've become over there. It's really nice, and a lot of people sharing ideas and stuff, so thanks for that. It's really nice to know that we've created a place where people can enjoy talking about this kind of stuff. The other group is my YouTube subscribers. We just passed 22,200. When I hear those numbers, that makes me a little bit blown away. I can't believe I have that many people following my channel, but thank you for that. Thank you for the really nice comments, and also thank you for the financial support that some people provide, like buying me a coffee or the super thanks, or buying some merch or one of my ebooks. Those things really help to keep me funded so I can continue to do this channel, so thanks for that. All right, well, let's talk about the Miter Vise Jig. This is one of my design idea sketchbooks that you can get on my merch store if you're interested. The newer ones, I started putting some useful charts on the back. This particular one has gauge to inches to millimeters, and I use that one all the time. There's a few other ones with different information if you look through the list of them. What I like most about these, though, is the dot matrix in the background, which acts as a graph paper for me to sketch up my designs. I'm not super good at drawing, so it helps me to keep things sort of symmetrical. Today we're not doing a project so much as we're talking about the Miter Vise Jig, so we're not going to have any drawings to look at, but I did divide up what I wanted to talk about today about this. So one of the things I wanted to talk about to start with was what is a Miter Vise. And a Miter Vise jig is simply a device that's made to allow you to get very precise angles cut into metal. I'm sure they make these for woodworking too, in various forms, or at least the basic concept, because sometimes you need really precise angles, and so this allows you to do that. It has I have the low-end version here, and you can see if I unscrew these a little bit, it opens up like this. And if you look at the angle here, this is a 45-degree angle going that way. So it allows you to stick material in there and then either saw or file it down to a perfect 45-degree angle. The other slot that this one has is just a 90-degree one. And so you can also do very nice 90-degree angles. And a couple of things about the piece itself. It has different ways to hold the wire more efficiently, or the sheet. You can also use sheet. But this little slot here is great for if you want to keep square wire in place so it doesn't twist or anything on you. These little slots down here work great for round wire or tubing, or I suppose you could even do square wire in those going diagonally if you wanted to get that kind of a 45-degree angle on it. I haven't tried that before, but that might be interesting. And across this whole gap here, you could put a piece of sheet if you wanted to, and then file a 45-degree angle this way on it. So, same goes for the 90-degree angles. One of the things I thought about was when I was a beginner, I wasn't very good at filing a perfect 90-degree angle on things, so this would have been super useful to me. I wish someone had told me about them. So there's another variety of these as well. I do not have one yet, but one of these days when I'm feeling flush, I will give in and buy myself one. But the more expensive one will have also a 60-degree slot, which will allow you to do an additional set of angles, which would be handy sometimes. So before I did this video, since I bought this a while back, I looked up some prices, and I'm seeing them online in various places anywhere from $40 up to $270. So I am not an expert on the particular brands or anything that are the best ones to get. So if any of you know of a brand that you really trust, I'd appreciate it if you'd leave it in the comment section, because it's nice to know who makes the really good quality ones. And with something like this, you want the angles to be really precise and well machined. So I think I got lucky because I bought a really cheap one when I first got it, and it has pretty good angles on it. So I've heard some other people talk about these in the past, saying that the one that they had, the angles were really quite a bit off. So something to think about there. So yeah, but if anybody knows a particular brand that is superior, let me know in the comments, because I'm curious, and I will eventually buy a new one of these too. They're generally made from tool steel or carbon steel, so they're pretty hard, so they can stand up to running a saw or a file across them without getting too beat up or scratched up. So I wanted to talk about some of the various uses, and the first one is what I was talking about as a beginner. I always have my beginners solder the ends of a band straight together. Sometimes beginners struggle with getting perfect 90-degree angles, and even I have days where, even though I've been doing this for so long, I just don't, I'm not having a good filing day. So these are super handy for that kind of a situation, if you're a beginner or if you're just having a bad filing day. So I've heard people say that they've had some dulling of their files from doing this. I've also heard people say that it absolutely doesn't. You know, I wouldn't use your finest $200 German file or whatever you have to do this with, but it is a handy way with an older file. Buy yourself a nice 90-degree angle. So you just stick it through. I was using one of these slots down here. We'll pull it down to where I want it to be flattened to is there. And then we can just file it there. So you do occasionally get a little bit of a filing burr there. You can usually pick that off, or use your rotary tool or something to just kind of grind it away. But it usually comes off pretty quickly and easily. So let's see. It was fun when I was teaching high school kids to make bands like this, and you tell them to file the end flat, and they bring it back, and it looked like a lightning bolt on the end. They say, "Is this flat enough, Chad?" Like, maybe you should work on it a little bit more. Okay, let's see how good of a clean join we get here. I should probably do that every time I make bands, but I don't. But it does really make for a nice clean solder join. So that's something to think about. Just doing that when you're a beginner takes a lot more time than it would if you just have one of these things. So it'd save you some time for sure. And getting the size right, because sometimes people continue filing and filing and filing. So you also can, with these things, you don't have to use a file. You could use, let's put a piece of 14 gauge wire through here. Some people use their saw a lot on these. You can do the same thing. Let me go grab my saw. Normally, I would probably have this attached to a vise when I was doing this, but for the sake of the video here, I'm just going to say there we go. Do be careful if you're doing that. I have honestly The saw is the way that I've injured myself the worst in my jewelry studio ever. So those little blades will cut right through skin and right to the bone pretty quickly, so be careful. But that gives you a nice flat surface like that. It's also a good way to hold tubing when you're cutting that, because sometimes when you're at your bench pin trying to cut tubing with a saw, it's just kind of a pain. Let's do a 45 this time just for giggles. So I'll feed that in there. Especially if you're trying to do something precise like this. Let's see how that goes with the saw. You get a really nice clean cut then. Hopefully you can see that. Another situation where people struggle at the beginning is with cutting bezels to a nice straight edge, and that would be pretty much the same as the bands that I just showed you. But that would certainly help a beginner. One thing about that, if you were to use a piece of bezel, let's find some rando bezel here. This is 1/4 inch, so it's really tall. Line it up next to this bar that goes all the way through like this, so that you have a perfectly straight 90-degree angle there in this thing, because you could easily put it in crooked. The thing that I've probably found them the most useful for is to make frames for things. Like if I'm going to make a setting for a rectangular or a square stone, and I want it to have a bottom on it made out of square wire or something, you want to make a nice frame for it and have it be, hopefully more symmetrical than I just drew that, but you want a 45-degree angle on all of these wires like that. And so it's useful for that kind of thing, and I did a few in advance, so let's just do one and then I'll show you how you can arrange them. So I pre-did some of these ends here just to save time, so I could show you, but I'll show you how I got this exact shape and size. I took a piece of this scrap wire that I had laying around, and let's stick it in the Miter Vise Jig and the 45-degree slope right where the square wire slot is. This is 12 gauge square, so I think on this particular one 12 gauge square is the biggest that'll fit in that slot. That doesn't mean you couldn't do bigger sizes next to that slot, because it'll expand wider than that. Okay, so now that I have one edge filed like that, I'm going to jump ahead here in my outline and talk about a trick. If you have a marker, and I want to get these pretty exact, so let's get that lined up as close as we can on one end. Make a mark with a marker like that. The reason I'm doing this is it's easier to see a very precise, sharp line and get it exact then if you can see it through a dark marker like that. So you can see pretty clearly where the line is then. So now when I feed this in there, I can get it pretty close. And I did it, the place I started the line from was on the outside edge here. So that's the side that I want to be right up against there, because the rest of it I just kind of freehanded. I didn't precisely draw that angle, I just drew an angle so I knew which way I was going to go. I don't know if I said that well. Okay, sometimes if I have a lot like this to do, I'll just snip off, most of it, and then file off the rest here. People think I'm weird, but I really kind of like filing. It's sort of soothing to me for some reason. Maybe because you can see the progress as you go. See how close I am there. Pretty good, actually. So, now, a couple of things you can do with these. One is you can make a square. In this case, it's going to be a square because I made them all the same length. I'm trying to get rid of any kind of little burrs here. See, that'll get you pretty close to a perfect square. So you just solder it at each corner like that, and then you got a great frame. So I really like that aspect of it. Another thing you can do, strangely, is you can make an octagon too. If we flip these over, this is going to make a big octagon. Flip over. You take some other pieces, and if you solder these together the same length in between the corners here. I marked it out on some of these. You may not be able to see it. I'll probably, if I was going to solder these together, I would take a little bit more time to get them all lined up right. And I'd probably solder them in stages. But the angles, when you do solder them, should pull them to be in the right angles. But you get the basic idea. You can make an octagon out of 45-degree angles as well. So I've done that a couple of times, and I found it to be pretty handy. These also usually come with another feature. It's got a little it's got these two holes here, and it has this little, almost looks like an Allen wrench, but it's round, and it allows you to, it does come with an Allen wrench too usually, that you can lock these down with at a particular length. That way, if you want to cut all pieces of the same length, you can use that as a stop. Cut that off, and slide it in again, tighten it down, cut it off, and then you get all the same length pieces. That's kind of handy. If you wanted to do the edge of some sheet, say you're making a box or something. Oops, where'd you go? You can do that, or if you just need a nice straight edge. See, I've got the sheet clamped up next to the little square wire bar. That keeps it at a 90-degree angle, right? At least. Oh, I got a pretty nice 45-degree edge on that. Well, I could have done a little better job, but definitely better than I could have free-handed that. I showed you the Sharpie trick. One thing that I haven't talked about is if you have little stumpy pieces of things and you need to file them, sometimes that is difficult to hold on to those things, and it's probably not a prescribed use for this particular piece of equipment. However, with my fingers I have trouble holding on to something like that to file, and so if I need something like this held in place, say I wanted to taper the end into kind of like a rounded shape or something, holding on to that to do it. If you know, it's always best if you can leave it attached to a bigger piece that you have something to hold on to. But something like this, you put it in the Miter Vise Jig, you can then go ahead and you got something to hold it in place while you kind of sculpt it into the shape you want. If I have to make a whole bunch of really short tapered pieces of wire, sometimes this is the way to go about it. It just kind of gives us a little something to hold on to when we have a real short piece. Last but not least, let me show you something else. Okay, so one other use for these little holes here, and I don't remember where I saw this, somebody's video, but it was a cool idea I've never thought of, was if you put some little skinny nails into a piece of wood, I'm going to use my bench pin here at the right distance like that. You can take your Allen wrench that comes with these and secure it pretty tightly. So that way you have it attached to something pretty secure, and it'll make it easier to file or saw against it, I think. So, but I think that's about all I got. If anybody else has any other good tips about how they use their Miter Vise Jig, that's always nice to hear other people's ideas and the clever things that they come up with to use tools in unusual ways. So let me know what you think. Also, let me know what kind of stuff you do with your Miter Vise Jig. So, all right. Okay, well, hopefully you found the video about the Miter Vise Jig a little useful. If you've never heard of them before, I think it's probably a worthy thing to get a hold of. I want you to know I appreciate you watching, and if you enjoyed this, I would also appreciate it if you'd hit the like button before you leave. And you might want to check out my main channel page. I have I just passed 500 videos. I've been doing 3 per week for about 3.5 years now, and so I've accumulated quite a collection of information over there. So if you enjoyed this, make sure to check that out, watch a few videos, and subscribe to my channel. I'd love to have you as a subscriber. Also, visit the video description down below. There's some important links there. If you're interested in finding out more about my Patreon community over there, there's some information as well as a link to it there. There's a link to where you can download my ebooks, each of which is a guide to an entire year's worth of tutorials, including a link to the tutorial, but also additional information like a picture of my sketch and a final picture of the piece, a list of materials you need to make it, a difficulty rating, and additional information about each one, like did I learn something from the project, or would I do it differently if I did it a second time. It's a great guide to a whole bunch of video tutorials and a really nice way to support my channel. So if you get yourself one of those, I do appreciate it, and I hope you enjoy it. And finally, there's a link to my merch store. If you want to get yourself some Chad merch, you can buy my books there. You can get those nice design idea sketchbooks that I showed you at the beginning. Those are super handy for keeping track of your projects, and so you can go back and revisit them later. So get yourself one of those. I think they're handy. All right, well, thanks for coming today. Take care. Happy silversmithing.